Welcome back, everybody, to another week of Sunday School here at the Lighthouse Church of the Nazarene in Moravia, Iowa, where we're going through the book of Job. This week we're going to be in Job chapter 2. In Job chapter 1, we find Job, who is the wealthiest, righteous man in all of the East. Satan came and destroyed all his possessions. Everything is gone, and his 10 children are gone. I hope he had good insurance, right? Well, why did Satan do all that? Because Satan said to God, if you take away all his blessings, Job will curse you to your face. Well, Job passed the test. All that went away, and what happened? What did Job say? Naked I came from my mother's womb, naked shall I return. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And it says, in all this, Job did not sin. Well, this week, this is almost going to be like round 2 for the boxing match. Job got beat up, and he's coming back for more. This week, Job is also going to lose his health. So this begs the question, why would God allow Job to suffer like this? In our minds, it just seems like this doesn't even seem fair. But let's think about it this way. What if God had said to Job, hey, Job, can I use your life to bring comfort and encouragement to millions of people for thousands of years? Would that be okay, Job? And I have to think Job would say, yep, I can do that. It's interesting. C.S. Lewis, somebody asked him once, why do the righteous suffer? And his answer was, why not? They're the only ones that can handle it. So the book of Job brings about a lot of questions. Some will get answered. Some questions, there just aren't any answers. But anyway, Job, this week, he's going to lose his health. Let's just dig into it. We're in the book of Job, Job chapter 2, verse 1. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. Now, we don't know the time span between the events of chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2. Adam Clarke says that it's 1 year, but I don't know where Adam Clarke gets that information from. So, anyway, I don't think it did happen all in one day where all his possessions, all his children, and then the next day he wakes up and his health is gone. I think he's probably had time to grieve over the loss of everything else, and then this comes along. So verse 2, and the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? As if God doesn't know. This is like when God asked Adam in the garden, where are you? God knew where he was. God knew where Satan had been this whole time. But Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it. Now, Satan is not trespassing when he walks to and fro on the earth. After all, the Bible tells us that the world is his. Jesus himself referred to Satan as the ruler of this world. I believe it's 1 John 5:19, where John says the whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. This is his domain. He is the prince of this era. The Bible tells us that. So verse 3, this is what Satan says to God. And then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without a cause. God likes to brag on his children, does he not? God's bragging on Job. He says, there's none like him, blameless and uprightness, even though you caused all this calamity to come upon him. Verse 4. So Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has, he will give for his life. This is actually true right here. Skin for skin. All that a man has, he will give for his life. Self-preservation is the most basic instinct there is. We know this because if you try to rescue a drowning person, you better know what you're doing, or what will the drowning person do to you? They'll drown you just to get up above the water to try to save themselves. So Satan is saying, oh yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. Stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. Verse 6, and the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. Notice that God still put limitations on Satan. Satan can only go this far, no further. So this causes us to ask another theological question. If God is all-knowing and all-powerful, which he is, and he can limit Satan how far he can go, why does God allow Satan to do anything at all? How are we going to answer that question? Why doesn't God just crush Satan right now, throw him into the lake of fire right now where we know he's going to end up, Why did God even create Satan in the first place? We would have to ask this. If God knows the beginning from the end, why did he create Satan in the first place? Do you know what the answer is? Free will. You see, we all have a choice. God did not create evil. He created the potential for evil because he gives us freedom of choice. And we couldn't have freedom unless we had the potential to sin. And we have free will. We have free choice. Joshua said, choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua said, choose. We can choose to follow God, or we can choose to reject God and his plan of salvation through Jesus Christ and live our own way. One way we can think about this, look, I have children. If I told my children, stay here and don't move, but then I tied them up so that they couldn't move, and then I came back and said, oh, you guys are just such well-behaved children. You didn't move. You did exactly what I told you to. No, they didn't have a choice. God gives us a choice. If instead I said, hey kids, I want you to stay right here and not move until I return, and on their own free will, they were obedient and stayed there, then you would say, nice job. You had a choice. You could have done something else. We have free will. So I hope this makes sense. God did not create evil. He gave us free will, and with that, he gave us the potential to do evil. And that's where it all comes in. That's the best answer I can give you for this right here. So let's keep going here. Verse 7. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his feet to the crown of his head. So even the bottom of his feet have boils, painful boils, where he couldn't even stand. And think about this. Satan goes and creates all this mess, and then he just walks away. We're actually not going to hear from him about him for the rest of this book. But that's what he does. God's people have to clean up the mess that Satan leaves. And we all actually know people like this, that we call them instigators, agitators, troublemakers. They love to create conflict and then just walk away and laugh about it, right? Well, that's what Satan does. Let's keep reading here. Verse 8. So Job is now got painful boils from the sole of his feet to the crown of his head. Verse 8. And he took for himself a potsherd. A potsherd is just a broken piece of pottery, all it is. He took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him, Job's wife, we'll call her Mrs. Job here. Job's wife, a lot of people talk about her. She really gets a bad rap. Let's see what Job's wife says. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. Now, some people refer to Job's wife as an unsupportive, sharp-tongued wife, but let's just think about Mrs. Job for a second. Mrs. Job has also lost all 10 of her children. All 10 of her children, she's the one that bore them. She's the one that raised them. So she has also lost all of her children. She's grieving. They weren't just Job's children. They were her children too. And all of Job's wealth, that was her wealth too. They were a family. So all the family wealth is gone. Her husband now has an incurable disease and is sitting in the city dump in ashes with the rest of the outcasts. This woman is also grieving and in agony, and this is what comes out of her mouth. There also seems to almost be some fear of God in Mrs. Job's voice, because she says, curse God and die. She's almost saying this. I would say that there is a fear of God in her. She says, if you curse God, he'll kill you. And we can just end all this right now. Now, what can we take away from this? Well, first, I'm not going to judge somebody in the worst hour of her life based by what she said here in the Bible. But we could also take away this. We as spouses, we should make each other's lives easier, not harder. Also, Satan loves to sow strife in marriages, does he not? That's his strategy, and he loves to do it. But let's see how Job answers his wife here. But Job said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Now, Job's answer, we don't really, it all depends on how you read it. We don't get the tone and intonation of his voice. Does he say, woman, you're speaking as one of the foolish ones? Or is he saying, no, honey, you're speaking as one of the foolish ones? This really seems out of character to you. But he's saying, who is the foolish one? You speak as one of the foolish women speak. What is the Bible's definition of a fool? A fool has said in his heart that there is no God. That's the Bible's definition of a fool. So Job seems to be saying, you're speaking as somebody who has no fear of God and we don't want to be this way. So Then Job tells his wife, shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? Shall we accept good from God and not adversity? Is it okay to only serve God when things are going our way and then we turn away from him in times of trouble? Absolutely not. Does God owe us anything? Absolutely not. And do we thank him for every good thing in our life? Because the Bible says, it's in the book of James, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. We know this. Apart from God, man is naturally discontent and ungrateful. So we can't just say, oh, God's blessing me in these times, and then when we have troubles come our way, say, God, where are you in this? Don't you love me? In fact, trials and suffering and trouble bring good things. We'll get into that next week. We'll talk about that. So Job says, shall we indeed accept good and not bad? Job is now past the second test. Now we're going to get into the third part of chapter 2, and these are Job's friends. If we were breaking out an outline, we could have Job's health, Job's wife, and Job's 3 friends. Now, these 3 friends, they're very interesting. A lot of people know about something about them too. In fact, Job's 3 friends, it's in Job chapter 16. Job actually refers to them and says, miserable comforters are all of you. So let's see what happens here. Verse 11. Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. Now we're going to be talking about these guys throughout the rest of the book, so we'll dig into them a little more in a future date here. For they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him and comfort him. So Job's 3 friends are coming. There's going to be a 4th friend named Elihu that comes along in chapter 32. Verse 12, and when they raised their eyes from afar and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept. And each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head toward heaven. Job is in such bad shape that his own friends don't even recognize him. So verse 13, so they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. And no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was very great. So Job's friends, if you've read the book of Job before, Job's friends, these guys also get a bad rap. They get a bad reputation. But there's something we do need to admire about these 3 friends first here. First, how many friends do you think Job had in his life? He probably had a ton of friends. He was one of the greatest of the East. He probably had people stopping by all the time. So Job surely had more than 3 friends. But these 3 friends, these were the ones that were actually willing to come and spend some time with him. So I'm going to say these were good friends. Also, did his friends say anything to him? No. For 7 days, they just sat there and said nothing. Those are good friends also that will spend 7 straight days not, well, I better be going. I have a lot to do. No, these guys were good friends. Also, do they try to explain everything away to him? No, not one bit. They just sit with him. This is what is referred to as the ministry of presence. When people are grieving and going through very bad times, there's no explanation or answer that's going to make them feel okay. But just your presence, knowing that you care, that's really all you can do. And people just need to know that you care. It's actually when these 3 friends open their mouths, that's when things go downhill pretty quickly. Also, one last thing we can say about Job's 3 friends here that I think is a very admirable trait of them. At least when they do open their mouth, they think enough about Job to say the things to Job and not just go gossip with all the neighbors about Job and all his troubles. They actually think enough to talk to him about it. And I think that's admirable there. Well, we're done with chapter 2. Chapter 2 is just a short 13 verses here. Next week in chapter 3, Job's going to break his silence. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. And I'll see you the same time, same place next week. Bye.